The millionaire dines in silence, surrounded by luxury and security guards. Out of nowhere, a poor girl bursts into the restaurant and stares at him closely. In a weak voice, she asks, "Daddy, can I eat with you?" And his answer turned her destiny upside down. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The soft glow of chandeliers reflected off the crystal glasses at Le Ciel, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, where tables were booked months in advance, and dinner for one could cost more than a month's rent in most New York apartments. In the corner table, partially hidden by an ornate pillar, sat Jonathan Miller, CEO of TechVision, one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the country. At 42, Jonathan had everything money could buy: a penthouse overlooking Central Park, a fleet of luxury cars, and a net worth that placed him comfortably among America's elite. Yet as he sat alone, absent-mindedly twirling his fork in a plate of barely touched risotto, his eyes were fixed on his phone, scrolling through endless corporate emails. The ambient sounds of quiet conversations and the gentle clink of silverware against fine china faded into white noise as he remained isolated in his digital world, disconnected from everything around him. Outside, beyond the restaurant's ornate, wrought iron fence and watchful security, 10-year-old Emma Anderson pressed her small face between the bars. Her blonde hair was tangled and dirty, her clothes worn and too thin for the April chill that settled over New York City after sunset. She had been watching the restaurant for days, observing the patrons who entered and exited without ever noticing her presence. Emma's stomach growled painfully. It had been almost 2 days since she'd had anything substantial to eat. After her mother Sarah's passing 3 months ago, she had been briefly taken in by a man she was told was her biological father. The arrangement lasted less than a week before he abandoned her at a bus station with nothing but a backpack of clothes and $20. Since then, she had survived on discarded food and occasional kindness from strangers who didn't ask too many questions. The aroma of food wafting from Le Ciel's kitchen exhaust was torture. Emma followed it around to the back of the building, where staff occasionally stepped out for breaks. When a delivery truck arrived and the kitchen door opened, she seized her opportunity and slipped inside, immediately overwhelmed by the warmth and the intoxicating smells of gourmet food. "Hey, you can't be in here," a sous chef shouted when he spotted her reaching for a piece of bread from a counter. Emma darted between prep stations, her small size an advantage in the crowded kitchen. She managed to grab a roll and stuff it into her pocket before the restaurant manager, a stern-faced woman in a tailored suit, cornered her. "This isn't a shelter, young lady," the manager said, gripping Emma's arm tightly. "I'm calling security." Emma twisted free, fear and desperation propelling her forward. Instead of heading back toward the exit, she burst through the swinging doors into the main dining room, momentarily stunned by the elegance and opulence. Diners turned to stare as the disheveled child stood frozen in the entrance to the dining area. Security was approaching quickly. In a split-second decision fueled by panic and instinct, Emma ran straight to Jonathan Miller's table. Something about his solitary presence, the way he sat alone despite having everything called to her. She reached his table just as security closed in. Jonathan looked up from his phone, startled by the commotion. His eyes, a deep blue that had appeared cold and distant moments before, widened in surprise. "Papai," Emma blurted out, the Portuguese word for daddy slipping out involuntarily, a word her Brazilian mother had taught her to say to the father she'd never known. Her voice trembled as she switched to English. "Please, can I eat with you?" The restaurant fell silent. Forks paused midway to mouths. Conversations halted mid-sentence. All eyes turned to the unexpected tableau of the disheveled child and the powerful CEO. Jonathan stared at Emma, momentarily transported to his own childhood, the years spent in the Westchester County orphanage after his parents disappeared from his life. The hunger that was never quite satisfied by institutional meals, the longing for connection that achievements and wealth had never fulfilled. "Sir," the security guard said, reaching for Emma, "we'll remove her immediately." Jonathan raised his hand, stopping the guard. "That won't be necessary." His voice was quiet but carried an unmistakable authority. He studied Emma's face, her intelligent eyes, the determined set of her jaw that somehow reminded him of himself. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma," she replied, standing straighter despite her trembling legs. The manager approached, her expression a mixture of apology and irritation. "Mr. Miller, I'm so sorry for this disruption. We'll handle this situation immediately." Jonathan's gaze never left. "Emma, somewhat, there's no situation to handle. Miss Emma will be joining me for dinner." He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Please bring another menu." The manager's mouth opened and closed without sound, caught between customer service and protocol. Finally, she nodded stiffly and signaled to a nearby waiter. Emma hesitantly slid into the chair, her feet dangling above the plush carpet. Her hands, small and dirty with chipped nails, rested awkwardly on the pristine white tablecloth. "Are you hungry?" Jonathan asked, already knowing the answer. Emma nodded, her eyes welling with tears she refused to let fall. "I haven't eaten since yesterday morning." Something shifted inside Jonathan, a protective instinct he didn't know he possessed. He signaled the waiter who had been hovering uncertainly nearby. "Bring the chef's selection for my guest. And a hot chocolate." He turned back to Emma. "Is there anything you don't like to eat?" "I'm not picky," she said, with a seriousness that no child should possess. "When you're hungry enough, you'll eat anything." The truth of her words struck Jonathan like a physical blow. He had built an empire on innovation and ruthless efficiency, had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, but this child's simple statement humbled him in a way nothing had before. As the waiter hurried away, whispers resumed around them. Cell phones discreetly captured photos of the unusual pair. Jonathan knew the images would be on social media within minutes, but for once he didn't care about the potential publicity. "Where are your parents, Emma?" he asked gently. Emma's eyes dropped to the table. "My mom is gone. The man who was supposed to be my dad didn't want me." Jonathan's throat tightened. "And where are you staying now?" She shrugged, a gesture too world-weary for her years. "Different places. Wherever I can find, that's safe." The first course arrived, a delicate mushroom soup garnished with truffle. Oil. Emma's eyes widened at the presentation, but she waited until Jonathan nodded before picking up her spoon. She took a careful sip, then closed her eyes, savoring the rich flavor. "This is the best thing I've ever tasted," she whispered. Jonathan found himself smiling, a genuine smile that felt foreign on his face. When was the last time he had truly smiled? Not the practiced expression he wore for business photos or network events, but an honest reaction to joy. As Emma ate, Jonathan watched her, his own meal forgotten. With each bite she took, his initial shock transformed into something deeper, a connection he couldn't explain. This child who had appeared from nowhere had somehow bridged the carefully constructed walls around his life. When Emma had finished her main course, a perfectly cooked filet mignon she had devoured with surprising manners, Jonathan made a decision that would alter both their lives forever. "Emma," he said quietly, "would you like to come home with me tonight? I have plenty of room, and it's much better than wherever you've been staying." Emma studied him with eyes that had seen too much for her age, weighing her options with the caution of someone who had learned the hard way that kindness often came with conditions. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "You don't even know me." Jonathan considered her question seriously. "Sometimes," he said finally, "we meet people who remind us of who we really are beneath everything else. I think maybe you're one of those people for me." Emma nodded slowly, a tentative hope flickering across her face. "Okay," she said simply, "I'll come." As Jonathan signaled for the check, neither of them could have imagined how completely their lives were about to change, or that their encounter was perhaps not entirely by chance at all. Jonathan's Bentley glided through the streets of Manhattan, the city lights reflecting off its polished surface. Inside, Emma sat perfectly still, afraid that any sudden movement might break the spell and return her to the harsh reality of the streets. Her small hands were folded in her lap, her posture rigid despite the supple leather seats that seemed to envelop her tiny frame. "Are you comfortable?" Jonathan asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them since leaving the restaurant. Emma nodded, her eyes wide as she took in the car's luxurious interior. "I've never been in a car like this before." "It's just a car," Jonathan replied, suddenly conscious of the excesses that had become normal to him. "A rather expensive one, I suppose." The car turned onto Fifth Avenue, and Emma pressed her face against the window as they passed the illuminated storefronts of designer boutiques. "Where do you live?" she asked, her breath fogging the glass. "Upper East Side. I have a penthouse overlooking Central Park," Jonathan said, watching her reaction carefully. "It's probably bigger than I need, but it has a great view." 10 minutes later, they pulled into a private underground garage beneath one of Manhattan's most prestigious residential buildings. The valet opened the door with a respectful nod to Jonathan, hesitating only briefly at the sight of Emma before maintaining his professional demeanor. In the private elevator that required a key card to access the penthouse levels, Emma finally spoke the fear that had been building inside her. "Are you really going to let me stay, or will you change your mind tomorrow?" The question pierced Jonathan's carefully constructed emotional armor. He knelt down to her level, meeting her eyes directly. "I keep my promises, Emma. You can stay, as long as you need to." The elevator opened directly into the penthouse foyer, revealing a space that was as impressive as it was impersonal. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a breathtaking nighttime view of Central Park and the city beyond. But the interior was a study in minimalist luxury, all clean lines, neutral tones, and carefully curated artwork that cost more than most people's homes but conveyed no personal connection to its owner. "This is all yours?" Emma whispered, her footsteps silent on the marble floors. "It is," Jonathan confirmed, watching as she took hesitant steps into the vast living room. He suddenly saw his home through her eyes, beautiful but sterile, expensive but empty. When was the last time he had entertained here? When had anyone other than his housekeeper and occasional business associates crossed this threshold? "Are you hungry again?" "I could have something prepared," he offered, realizing he had no idea how to care for a child. What did 10-year-olds eat? What time should they go to bed? Emma shook her head. "I'm still full from dinner. That was the most food I've had in..." She trailed off, her expression clouding. "Let me show you where you can sleep," Jonathan said, quickly, leading her down a hallway to one of the guest suites. He opened the door to reveal a bedroom larger than most Manhattan apartments, complete with its own bathroom and sitting area. Emma stepped inside cautiously, as if expecting to be told it was a mistake. She touched the silk duvet with reverent fingers. "Is this really where I get to sleep?" "Yes, the bathroom is through there if you'd like to clean up. I'll find you something to wear." Jonathan hesitated, suddenly overwhelmed by the practical aspects of his impulsive decision. "I don't have any children's clothes, but maybe a t-shirt of mine would work as a nightgown until tomorrow." Emma nodded, already moving toward the bathroom with the eagerness of someone who hadn't had access to proper facilities in too long. While she showered, Jonathan called Rachel Harper, his personal assistant of 5 years. Despite the late hour, she answered on the second ring. "Jonathan, is everything okay?" Rachel's voice held the familiar mix of efficiency and concern that had made her invaluable to him. "I need your help with something unusual," he said, keeping his voice low. "I've brought a child to my home, a girl about 10 years old. She was homeless and I couldn't leave her on the streets." The brief silence on the other end spoke volumes. "I see," Rachel finally said, her tone carefully neutral. "And you need children's clothes for starters, and probably food that a kid would actually eat, and whatever else a 10-year-old girl might need." He ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "I'm out of my depth here." "Rachel, I'll be there in an hour," she promised without hesitation. "And Jonathan, this is a good thing you're doing." After hanging up, Jonathan stood in the hallway, listening to the sound of running water from the guest bathroom. What was he doing? He had no experience with children, no understanding of what Emma had been through, no plan beyond getting her off the streets for the night. Yet something about her presence already felt right, as if she belonged here in a way that even he never had. When Emma emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a plush towel nearly bigger than she was, her hair damp and her face scrubbed clean, she looked even younger and more vulnerable. "I found you something to sleep in," Jonathan said, holding out one of his t-shirts. "It's too big, but it's clean." Emma took it gratefully and retreated to the bathroom to change. When she returned, swimming in the shirt that hung to her ankles, she seemed different, more obviously a child, rather than the street-hardened survivor who had approached his table at Le Ciel. "Thank you," she said formally, standing awkwardly. In the middle of the room, "You're welcome," Jonathan gestured to the bed. "You should get some rest. My assistant is coming over with some things for you." Emma climbed onto the high bed, sinking into its plush comfort with visible amazement. "I don't remember the last time I slept in a real bed," she admitted, her voice small. Jonathan felt something crack inside his chest. "Well, this one is yours for as long as you want it." He moved to turn off the light, but hesitated. "Would you like it on or off?" "On, please," Emma said quickly, then looked embarrassed. "If that's okay." Of course, Jonathan dimmed the lights to a soft glow. "I'll be just down the hall if you need anything. Good night, Emma." "Good night, Jonathan," she replied, testing his name cautiously. He was nearly to the door when her voice stopped him again. "Why did you help me?" "Really?" Jonathan turned back, considering her question seriously. "When I was not much older than you, I was also alone. Not on the streets, but in a place where no one cared if I existed. I promised myself that if I ever made it out, I would be different from the people who looked through me like I was invisible." Emma nodded, accepting his answer with the solemnity of someone far beyond her years. "I'm glad you saw me." "So am I," he replied honestly. Rachel arrived 45 minutes later, remarkably put together despite the late hour and the hasty summons. She carried several shopping bags and was followed by a delivery person with more. "I got the essentials," she explained, setting the bags down in the kitchen. "Clothes, toiletries, some books and activities. The rest can wait until morning." Jonathan led her to his office where they could speak privately. "Thank you for doing this without questions." Rachel smiled slightly. "Oh, I have questions. Many of them, but they can wait." Her expression grew serious. "Jonathan, you need to know that this isn't as simple as giving her a place to stay. There are legal considerations. She's a minor." "I know," he acknowledged, "but I couldn't just leave her on the streets. You should have seen her, Rachel. She was starving, alone." "What about her parents?" "Her mother is gone, and the father apparently abandoned her." Jonathan couldn't bring himself to use the word died when referring to Emma's mother, as if saying it might somehow make the girl's loss more concrete. Rachel's expression softened. "You've never mentioned wanting children before." "I didn't," Jonathan admitted, "but something happened when she called me papai. It was like something that had been missing suddenly appeared." "Papai?" Rachel repeated, raising an eyebrow. "It's Portuguese for daddy. I don't think she meant to say it, it just came out." He shook his head. "I know how crazy this sounds." "Not crazy," Rachel corrected gently. "Human. And that's not something I often get to say about you." She stood and gathered her purse. "Get some sleep. I'll be back in the morning, and we'll figure out next steps." After Rachel left, Jonathan checked on Emma one last time. She was already asleep, her small body barely making an impression on the king-sized bed. In sleep, the wariness disappeared from her face, revealing the child beneath the survivor. Something protective and fierce surged through him, a feeling so unfamiliar yet so natural that it took his breath away. Back in his own bedroom, Jonathan stood at the windows overlooking the city lights. For years, he had built walls around himself, constructed a life of achievement and acquisition that left no room for vulnerability. In the space of a single evening, a small girl with determined eyes had walked through those walls as if they didn't exist. Tomorrow would bring complications, questions, from his company, legal issues, the media attention that would inevitably follow. But for tonight, in the quiet of his normally empty home, Jonathan felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. the simple, powerful satisfaction of having done the right thing for no reason other than it needed to be done. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, casting long rectangles of sunshine across the marble floors. Jonathan stood in the kitchen, a cup of black coffee in his hand, watching his private chef Sofia Martinez prepare breakfast. Sofia, who usually came in 3 times a week to stock his refrigerator with meals he rarely had time to eat, had been surprised by his early morning call requesting a child-friendly breakfast, but had arrived promptly with bags of groceries and a warm smile. "How old is this child, Mr. Miller?" she asked as she whisked eggs in a large bowl. 10. "Her name is Emma," Jonathan replied, realizing he knew almost nothing else about the girl sleeping in his guest room. "She's staying with me for a while." Sofia nodded without pressing for details, her hands moving efficiently as she prepared pancake batter. Children need good food, not just fancy food, but food made with heart. Jonathan watched her work, struck by how the kitchen, a space he rarely used himself, was being transformed by Sofia's presence. The cold stainless steel and marble countertops seemed warmer somehow, filled with the aromas of vanilla, cinnamon, and brewing coffee. "Mr. Miller?" Emma's small voice came from the kitchen doorway. She stood uncertainly, dressed in the new clothes Rachel had brought last night, jeans and a simple blue sweater that was slightly too big, but infinitely better than her previous worn garments. "Good morning, Emma," Jonathan said, feeling strangely nervous. "This is Sofia, my chef. She's making us breakfast." Sofia turned with a warm smile that immediately put Emma at ease. "Good morning, Nina. I hope you like pancakes, and please call me Sofia." Emma nodded, her eyes wide at the spread being prepared. "I love pancakes. My mom used to make them on Sundays when she wasn't—" She stopped abruptly, her expression clouding. "When she wasn't working," Jonathan suggested gently. "Yeah," Emma agreed, relief evident in her face. "She worked a lot." Sofia gestured to a stool at the kitchen island. "Come sit. You can help me add the blueberries to the batter." As Emma hesitantly took her place at the counter and accepted the task, Jonathan's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Michael Reynolds, his business partner and TechVision's CFO. "I need to take this," he said, stepping out of the kitchen. "I'll be right back." In his office, he accepted the call. "Michael, good morning." "Is it?" Michael's voice was tense. "Have you seen the news, Jonathan? Or social media? You're trending, and not in the way our PR team would prefer." Jonathan sighed, not surprised but still irritated. "What are they saying?" "Tech billionaire adopts homeless child during dinner" is the most charitable headline. Others are more speculative about your motives. There are photos, Jonathan. Everyone in that restaurant had a smartphone. "I'm aware of that possibility," Jonathan replied evenly. "I don't see the problem." Michael's exasperation was palpable, even through the phone. "The problem is that you, the CEO of a publicly traded company valued at over $30 billion, made a major life decision on impulse, in public, without considering the implications. Our more conservative investors are already calling, concerned about your judgment. My personal life is not their business. Everything about you is their business. That's the reality of being who you are," Michael insisted. "Look, I'm not saying you should have left the kid on the street, but there are proper channels, organizations that handle these situations. You could have made a donation, set up a trust fund, anything other than bringing a stranger into your home." Jonathan felt a surge of anger. "She's a child, Michael, not a situation to be handled, and she's staying, at least for now. The investors will have to deal with it." A long silence followed. "This isn't like you," Michael finally said, his tone softer. "You've always been the rational one, the strategist who thinks 10 moves ahead. What's really going on here?" Jonathan glanced toward the kitchen where he could hear Emma's tentative laughter as Sofia showed her how to flip pancakes. "Maybe I'm tired of being that person," he said quietly. "Maybe there are more important things than strategic positioning and shareholder value." "I hope you know what you're doing," Michael said, resignation in his voice. "The board meeting is at 2. I suggest you prepare a statement about this situation. After hanging up, Jonathan stood at his office window watching the morning bustle of Central Park below. Michael wasn't wrong. This wasn't like him. In 20 years of building tech vision from a startup in his garage to one of the most valuable tech companies in the world, he had never made a decision without careful analysis, without weighing every possible outcome. Yet last night, in the space of a heartbeat, he had changed the course of his life based on nothing but instinct and emotion. When he returned to the kitchen, Emma was seated at the dining table, a stack of blueberry pancakes drowning in maple syrup before her. She looked up with a smile that transformed her face, making her appear truly her age for the first time since he'd met her. "These are amazing," she said around a mouthful of pancake. "Sophia said she can teach me how to make them." Jonathan sat across from her, accepting the plate Sophia set before him. That sounds like a good skill to have. As they ate, he found himself studying Emma's features, her determined chin, the shape of her eyes, the way her brow furrowed slightly when she concentrated. Was there something familiar there? Or was he imagining connections because he wanted them to exist? "Emma," he began carefully, "I need to go to work for a few hours today. My assistant Rachel will be here soon to stay with you. Is that okay?" Emma's fork paused midway to her mouth, her expression instantly guarded. "You're coming back, right?" The question broke his heart a little. How many times had adults disappeared from her life? "Yes, I'm coming back. This is my home, remember? And right now, it's your home too." She nodded, relaxing slightly. "What should I do while you're gone?" "Whatever you like. Rachel can help you get anything you need." He hesitated. "Actually, I was hoping you might do something for me." "What?" Emma asked, instantly eager to be useful. "Those plants." Jonathan gestured to a row of neglected potted plants on the terrace that had been slowly dying for months, despite the housekeeper's occasional watering. "They could use some care. Do you know anything about plants?" Emma's face lit up. "My mom had plants everywhere in our apartment. She taught me how to take care of them. Some need lots of water, and some just a little. And you have to talk to them sometimes." "Then they're yours to revive if you want the job," Jonathan said, surprised by her enthusiasm. "I'll make them beautiful again," she promised solemnly. Rachel arrived just as they were finishing breakfast. She carried more shopping bags and was accompanied by Jonathan's driver, who brought in several boxes. "Good morning," she greeted them both, her professional demeanor softening when she looked at Emma. "I brought some more things I thought you might need and a few books and activities." Emma stared at the bags with undisguised wonder. "All of that is for me?" "All of it," Rachel confirmed with a smile. "Why don't we go through it together, while Jonathan gets ready for his meeting?" As Jonathan showered and dressed in one of his impeccably tailored suits, he could hear the muffled sounds of female voices and occasional laughter from the living room, sounds that had never before echoed through his home. The penthouse had always been a place of silence and solitude, a retreat from the demands of his public life. Now, in less than 24 hours, it felt fundamentally changed, warmer somehow, as if Emma's presence had altered not just the social dynamics, but the physical space itself. He found Rachel in the kitchen preparing a cup of tea while Emma explored the contents of a box of art supplies on the living room floor. "She seems to be settling in," he observed quietly. Rachel nodded. "She's an extraordinary child, Jonathan. Resilient in a way most adults aren't." She hesitated, then added, "I need to tell you something. Last night, after I left, I did some research." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "On Emma?" "On the legal implications of what you're doing. Without proper documentation or legal authority, you could be accused of kidnapping regardless of your intentions." Her voice was gentle but firm. "We need to contact Child Protective Services, get proper temporary custody arrangements in place while we figure out the long-term situation." "I know," Jonathan acknowledged. "I've already called my personal attorney. He's looking into it." He glanced at Emma, who was carefully organizing colored pencils by shade. "But I want to minimize her interaction with the system. She's been through enough." Rachel studied him for a moment. There's something else, isn't there? Something you're not telling me about why this matters so much to you. Jonathan met her gaze directly. When I was 7, my parents left me at a state fair. They said they were going to get something to drink and would be right back. They never returned. He rarely spoke of this, the formative trauma that had shaped his life. I spent the next 11 years in the Westchester County orphanage. No one ever came for me. Rachel's expression softened with understanding. I didn't know. No one does. It's not in my official biography. His smile was bitter. Abandoned children don't make for inspiring executive profiles. Jonathan, Rachel began, then stopped, seeming to reconsider her words. Finally, she said, I understand why this matters to you, and I want you to know I was adopted when I was 12 after years in foster care. My adoptive parents changed my life completely. So if you're serious about helping Emma, I'm with you all the way. The revelation surprised him. In 5 years of working closely with Rachel, he had never known this about her past. Thank you, he said simply. Now go. Deal with the board and Michael. Rachel shooed him toward the door. Emma and I have plans to rescue those pitiful plants on your terrace and maybe bake cookies. Very important business. Jonathan knelt beside Emma before leaving. I'll be back this afternoon. Rachel will take good care of you. Emma looked up from her drawing, a colorful rendition of what appeared to be the New York skyline. I'll be okay, she assured him with an adult seriousness that squeezed his heart. And I'll fix your plants. I know you will, he replied, resisting the unexpected urge to hug her. They weren't there yet, this strange new family that wasn't quite a family, but perhaps someday they could be. As the private elevator descended to the lobby, Jonathan steeled himself for the day ahead. The board meeting, the media speculation, Michael's concerns, all of it paled in comparison to the responsibility he had taken on with one impulsive decision. A responsibility that, against all logic and his own carefully constructed life plan, felt more meaningful than anything he had ever done. The board meeting had gone exactly as Jonathan anticipated. Tense questions about his judgment, concerns about public perception, and thinly veiled suggestions that his personal decisions were affecting his professional acumen. He had weathered it all with the composed authority that had become his trademark, refusing to apologize for what he considered a private matter. By the end, even Michael had reluctantly conceded that the publicity wasn't entirely negative. Social media had dubbed Jonathan the billionaire with a heart, and several human interest reporters were requesting interviews. It was nearly 7 in the evening when Jonathan's private elevator opened into his penthouse. The transformation that greeted him stopped him in his tracks. The normally pristine, almost sterile space had been subtly but fundamentally altered. The previously lifeless plants on the terrace now stood in freshly arranged pots, their leaves already looking greener and more vibrant. Colorful drawings were taped to the refrigerator door, and the scent of freshly baked cookies permeated the air. But what truly caught him off guard was the sound of laughter. Emma's high, childish giggle intertwined with Rachel's more measured tones, coming from the direction of the media room he rarely used. He followed the sound to find them seated on the floor, surrounded by what appeared to be a makeshift fort constructed from couch cushions and blankets. A nature documentary played on the massive screen, but neither of them was watching it. Instead, Rachel was teaching Emma how to play a card game, both so engrossed that they didn't notice his presence until he cleared his throat. Jonathan, Emma scrambled to her feet, her initial excitement quickly tempered by uncertainty, as if she wasn't sure how he would react to the disarray they had created in his perfectly ordered home. Rachel stood more gracefully, brushing cookie crumbs from her usually immaculate skirt. We got a bit carried away with our afternoon activities, she explained, a hint of apology in her tone. Jonathan surveyed the scene, the fort, the scattered art supplies, the half-eaten plate of cookies, and found himself smiling. It looks like you two had a productive day. Emma's face brightened. We fixed all your plants. Sophia helped too before she left, and we made cookies, and Rachel showed me how to build a proper blanket fort like she used to make when she was my age. The words tumbled out in a rush of enthusiasm. I can see that, Jonathan replied. surprised by how much he enjoyed the changes to his normally pristine space. "I think my home has never looked better." "Really?" Emma asked, searching his face for any sign of displeasure. "You don't mind the mess?" "Not at all," he assured her, surprised to find he meant it. A home should look lived in. Rachel gathered her things, declining Jonathan's invitation to stay for dinner. At the elevator, she paused. "She had nightmares during her nap this afternoon," she said quietly. She didn't want to talk about it, but she was calling for her mother. Jonathan nodded, a weight settling in his chest. "Thank you for telling me, and for today." "She's a special kid," Rachel said. "Don't let the board pressure you into walking away from this." After Rachel left, Jonathan and Emma shared a dinner prepared by Sophia before she departed. A simple but delicious pasta dish that Emma declared was the best spaghetti ever. Throughout the meal, she chatted about her day, describing in detail how she had diagnosed each plant's specific problem and prescribed the appropriate care. "The ficus just needed more light, but your fern was really thirsty. Plants tell you what they need if you pay attention," she explained seriously. Jonathan found himself captivated by her animation, the way her entire face lit up when she talked about something that interested her. How long had it been since he had felt that kind of genuine enthusiasm for anything? After dinner, as Emma helped him load the dishwasher, insisting that she needed to contribute to the household, he broached the subject he had been considering all day. "Emma, I've been thinking. You need to go to school." Her hand stilled on the plate she was rinsing. "School?" "Yes. Every child should have an education." He had already made preliminary inquiries about private schools in Manhattan that might accept a mid-year enrollment. "Would you like that?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I used to go to school before everything changed. I liked learning." "Then it's settled. We'll find you a good school." Jonathan hesitated, then added, "And I've spoken with a lawyer about making your stay here official. Just temporary guardianship for now until we figure everything out." Emma's eyes widened. "Does that mean I can stay for real?" "Yes, if that's what you want." She nodded vigorously, water droplets flying from her still damp hands. "I want to stay here with you." Something warm expanded in Jonathan's chest. Feeling so unfamiliar, it took him a moment to identify it as happiness. Simple, uncomplicated happiness. The evening progressed peacefully. Jonathan found himself drawn into Emma's blanket fort, where they watched the conclusion of the nature documentary together. He couldn't remember the last time he had sat on the floor, or the last time he had watched television purely for enjoyment rather than news or market updates. When Emma's eyelids began to droop, he suggested it was bedtime. She didn't protest, but asked if he would read to her from one of the books Rachel had brought, a collection of children's stories that Jonathan vaguely remembered from his own childhood. Seated on the edge of her bed, reading about magical wardrobes and talking animals, Jonathan experienced a profound sense of rightness. This simple act of care and connection felt more significant than any business deal he had ever closed. Emma fell asleep midway through the second chapter, her breathing deep and even. Jonathan carefully marked the page and set the book aside, taking a moment to study her peaceful face. In sleep, the wariness that so often shadowed her expression melted away, revealing the child she should have been all along, secure, protected, free from worry. He was about to leave when Emma suddenly stiffened, her face contorting in distress. "Mum," she murmured, the word thick with sleep and fear. "Mum, don't go." Jonathan froze, uncertain how to respond. Should he wake her? Leave her to work through the nightmare? Before he could decide, Emma bolted upright, her eyes wide but unseeing, still caught in the grip of her dream. "Don't leave me," she cried, reaching out to grasp empty air. "Emma," Jonathan said gently, touching her shoulder. "Emma, you're safe. It's just a dream." She blinked several times, awareness gradually returning to her eyes. "Jonathan," she whispered, her voice small and frightened. "I'm here," he assured her. "You were having a bad dream." Emma's face crumpled. and to Jonathan's alarm, tears began streaming down her cheeks. "I saw my mum," she sobbed. "She was there and then she wasn't, and I couldn't find her anywhere." Acting on pure instinct, Jonathan gathered her into his arms, holding her as she cried. Her small body shook with the force of her grief. Grief, he understood all too well, the particular anguish of a child who has lost their anchor in the world. "I miss her so much," Emma whispered against his shoulder, "and I'm scared I'll forget what she looked like or how her voice sounded." "You won't forget," Jonathan promised, his own throat tight with emotion. "The people we love stay with us, even when they're gone." Emma pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Did you lose someone too?" Jonathan nodded, surprised by his willingness to share this part of himself. "My parents when I was very young, and later, someone else I loved very much." "Does it ever stop hurting?" He considered lying, offering the comfort of false hope, but Emma deserved honesty. Not completely, but it changes. The sharp pain becomes a dull ache, and eventually you can remember the good things without feeling like your heart is breaking. All over again. Emma absorbed this, her expression solemn. Then, without warning, she slipped from the bed. "I need to get something." She padded to the closet where Rachel had stored her few belongings and retrieved her worn backpack. From its depths, she pulled out a small tattered photograph and brought it back to Jonathan. "This is my mum," she said, offering him the photo. Jonathan took it carefully. The image showed a smiling woman with Emma's same determined chin and intelligent eyes, her arm around a younger version of Emma. They stood before what appeared to be a modest apartment building, both squinting slightly in the sunlight. "She was beautiful," Jonathan said honestly. "You look like her." "Her name?" "I was Sarah Anderson." Emma traced her mother's face with a gentle finger. "She worked really hard so I could have nice things. She was a housekeeper at a hotel, but she was taking classes to become a nurse." Jonathan studied the photograph more closely, a strange sensation tugging at his memory. Something about the woman's face, the particular curve of her smile. "She used to tell me stories about my father," Emma continued, reclaiming the photograph and holding it protectively against her chest. "She said he was smart and kind, but that he didn't know about me. She always said someday she would find him and tell him." "What happened?" Jonathan asked gently. "When did you lose her?" Emma's face clouded. 3 months ago. She got really sick, really fast. The doctors tried to help, but..." She swallowed hard. "After she was gone, they found my father's name in her things. They contacted him, and he came to see me, but he said he couldn't take care of a child. He left me at the bus station with some money. I tried to find my way back to our apartment, but other people were already living there, so I just stayed on the streets." Jonathan felt a surge of anger toward this unknown man who had abandoned his own child. "Do you remember his name, your father's name?" Emma shook her head. "The social worker told me, but it didn't mean anything to me. I was too upset to remember." She looked up at Jonathan, her eyes still damp but clearer now. "But it doesn't matter anymore. I found you instead." The simple trust in her statement humbled him. "Yes, you did," he agreed softly, "and I'm very glad." She settled back into bed, the photograph tucked securely under her pillow. "Will you stay until I fall asleep again?" she asked, her eyelids already growing heavy. "Of course," Jonathan promised, resuming his place on the edge of the bed. Emma was almost asleep when she murmured, "I'm glad I called you Papa in the restaurant, even if it was an accident." "So am I," Jonathan whispered, gently brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. He remained long after Emma had fallen back asleep, watching over her, his mind racing with questions about her mother, about the father who had rejected her, about the strange coincidence, if it was coincidence, that had brought her to his table that night. Later, alone in his study with a glass of scotch, Jonathan opened his laptop and began to search for information about Sarah Anderson. There had to be records, employment history, residence, perhaps an obituary. As a tech CEO with considerable resources at his disposal, he had access to search tools beyond those available to the general public. What he discovered kept him awake until the early hours of the morning, his heart pounding with a mix of shock, grief, and something close to wonder. The coincidence he had sensed was no coincidence at all. The universe, it seemed, had a strange way of bringing together what belonged together, even if it took 10 years and an improbable encounter in a Manhattan restaurant to do so. Dawn was breaking over Manhattan when Jonathan finally closed his laptop, his mind reeling from what he had discovered. Sarah Anderson had indeed worked as a housekeeper at the Westview Hotel 11 years ago, the same hotel where Jonathan had stayed for 6 months while his first company was being acquired. The timing aligned perfectly with Emma's age, but what had truly shaken him was finding a photograph of Sarah in an employee newsletter from that era. The resemblance between her and Emma was striking, but there was something else, something in the shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile, that had triggered a flood of memories. He remembered her now, Sarah, the kind-hearted housekeeper who had always left extra chocolates on his pillow, who had once helped him organize his chaotic papers when he'd fallen asleep amid a storm of documents. They had talked occasionally, brief, friendly exchanges that had been bright spots in an otherwise stressful period. And then there had been one night, a company celebration after the acquisition, too much champagne, an unexpected connection that had led to her room instead of his. Jonathan pressed his palms against his eyes. He had left the hotel the next day, embarking on a global business trip that lasted months. By the time he returned to New York, he was launching TechVision, consumed by the relentless demands of building a new company. He had never sought her out again, had eventually forgotten the encounter amid the whirlwind of his rising career. But Sarah hadn't forgotten, and apparently she had discovered she was pregnant. Why hadn't she contacted him? The question tormented him as he watched the sun rise over Central Park. He had been findable, his name increasingly in the business news as TechVision grew. Yet according to Emma, Sarah had always spoken of Emma's father as someone who didn't know about her, someone she intended to find someday. Perhaps she had tried. Perhaps his gatekeepers, the layers of assistance and security that had accumulated around him as his wealth and prominence grew, had prevented her messages from reaching him. Or perhaps she had been waiting for the right moment, a moment that never came because illness had taken her too soon. The realization struck him with the force of physical pain. Emma wasn't just a child he had impulsively taken in. She was his daughter, his biological daughter, who had by some miracle found her way to him despite impossible odds. The sound of soft footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. Emma stood in the doorway of his study, her hair tousled from sleep, her eyes still heavy-lidded. "You're up early," she said, stifling a yawn. Jonathan quickly closed the browser window displaying Sarah's photograph. "So are you," he replied, forcing a smile. "Did you sleep okay after the nightmare?" Emma nodded, padding into the room. "Your chair is really comfy. Did you sleep here instead of in your bed?" Jonathan glanced down at himself, realizing he was still wearing yesterday's clothes, now rumpled from his night in the office chair. "I was working on something important and lost track of time." He hesitated, then asked, "Are you hungry? We could make breakfast." "Can we have those little pastries Sophia left in the refrigerator?" Emma asked hopefully. "Absolutely." Jonathan stood, his body protesting after hours in the chair. "And maybe some hot chocolate?" Emma's face lit up. "With marshmallows?" "If we have any," Jonathan promised, relieved to postpone the conversation he knew they needed to have. He needed time to process his discovery, to decide how and when to tell Emma what he had learned. The kitchen, like the rest of the penthouse, felt different this morning, warmer, more inviting. Emma's influence was already evident in small touches. A colorful placemat on the counter, a line of seashells arranged along the windowsill, a drawing of what appeared to be Jonathan and Emma standing before a stylized version of his building, taped to the refrigerator. As they ate pastries and drank hot chocolate, Jonathan had found mini marshmallows in a cupboard he didn't even know existed. Emma chattered about her plans for the day, continuing her plant rehabilitation project, perhaps drawing more pictures for the refrigerator gallery, and maybe exploring the building's rooftop garden that Rachel had mentioned. "Can I ask you something?" she said suddenly. her expression turning serious. "Of course," Jonathan replied, bracing himself. "When will I have to leave?" The question caught him off guard. "Leave? Why would you think you have to leave?" Emma shrugged, her eyes fixed on her mug. "People always make me leave eventually. I just want to know when, so I can be ready." Jonathan reached across the table and gently tilted her chin up until she met his gaze. "Emma, I don't want you to leave ever. In fact, I was hoping you might consider staying here permanently, that I might adopt you." Her eyes widened. "Adopt me? Like forever?" "Like forever," he confirmed softly. Emma was silent. For a long moment, her face a complex mix of hope and wariness. "Why would you want to do that? You barely know me." The truth hovered on Jonathan's lips. "Because you're my daughter, because your mother and I created you together, because you belong with me." But he held it back. Not yet. Not until he was certain. Not until he had figured out how to explain it all. "I know enough," he said instead. "I know you're brave and kind and smart. I know you can bring dead plants back to life and build the best blanket forts in Manhattan. I know my home feels more like a home with you in it." Emma studied, his face searching for any sign of insincerity. "What if you change your mind? What if I do something wrong and you don't want me anymore?" "That won't happen," Jonathan promised. "When I commit to something or someone, it's forever. Ask anyone who knows me. I'm stubborn that way." A slow smile spread across Emma's face, transforming it. "Okay," she said simply. "I'd like that, to stay forever." Jonathan felt a weight lift from his chest. "Then we'll make it happen. It might take some time, there are legal processes, paperwork, but we'll start today." Emma surprised him by sliding off her stool and coming around the counter to hug him. It was their first real embrace, her thin arms wrapped tightly around his waist, her head resting against his chest. After a moment of shock, Jonathan hugged her back, marveling at how such a small person could generate such enormous feelings. When she pulled away, Emma's expression was lighter, as if a shadow had been lifted. "Can I call Sophia and ask her to teach me how to make those cinnamon things she was talking about yesterday, the ones that smell like Christmas?" "Absolutely," Jonathan agreed, grateful for the return to ordinary matters. "I'm sure she'd love to teach you." As Emma skipped off to find the phone Rachel had given her for emergencies, Jonathan remained at the counter, his emotions a tangled mix of joy, apprehension, and lingering shock from his discovery. He needed to confirm his suspicions with a DNA test, of course, but in his heart, he already knew the truth. The universe had engineered the most improbable reunion, bringing his daughter back to him when he hadn't even known she existed. Now he just had to figure out how to tell her. The opportunity came sooner than he expected. That afternoon, while searching through his office for a specific charger cable, Jonathan accidentally knocked over a box of old files he'd been meaning to digitize for years. Papers scattered across the floor, and as he knelt to gather them, a sealed envelope slipped from between two folders. The return address caught his eye immediately, Sarah Anderson, with a Queens address. The postmark dated it almost 10 years ago. With trembling hands, Jonathan opened the envelope, unfolding a handwritten letter that had never reached him. "Dear Jonathan," it began, "you may not remember me. We met at the Westview Hotel where I worked as a housekeeper. We spent one night together after your company's acquisition celebration. I'm writing because something wonderful and unexpected happened as a result of that night. I had a baby girl, your daughter. Her name is Emma, and she is the most precious thing in my life." Jonathan sank into his chair, his legs suddenly unable to support him as he continued reading. "I didn't write to ask you for anything," Sarah had continued. "I'm managing on my own, and Emma wants for nothing that matters. But I believe every child deserves to know where they come from, and every parent deserves to know their child exists. When Emma is a bit older, I hope you might want to meet her. She has your eyes and I think your determination." The letter concluded with contact information and a gentle assurance that she had no expectations, only a desire to do what was right for their daughter. "Jonathan," Emma's voice from the doorway startled him. "Sophia's here to make cinnamon rolls. She says you should help too." He looked up, quickly wiping moisture from his eyes. "I'll be right there." But Emma had already noticed the distress on his face. "What's wrong? Why are you sad?" Jonathan hesitated, then made a decision. "I'm not sad exactly. I just found something important. Come here, Emma. There's something I need to tell you." She approached cautiously, her eyes falling on the scattered papers and the letter in his hand. "What is it?" Jonathan patted the space beside him on the office couch. "It's about your mother, and about me, and about you." As Emma settled beside him, Jonathan took a deep breath. "Do you remember when you first came to my table at the restaurant? You called me Papai?" Emma nodded, looking embarrassed. "It just came out. Mom taught me that word. She said it was what I should call my father if I ever met him." "Emma," Jonathan said gently, "I think there's a reason you felt drawn to my table that night. I think there's a reason you called me that word." He hesitated, then continued. "I knew your mother, Sarah, many years ago before you were born." Emma's eyes widened. "You knew my mom?" "Yes. She worked at a hotel where I stayed during an important time in my business. She was kind to me when I was stressed and overworked." He carefully edited the full truth for her 10-year-old ears. "And I believe I'm your father, Emma." Emma went perfectly still, her expression unreadable. "My father? The one who left me at the bus station?" "No," Jonathan said quickly. "Not him. I never knew about you, Emma. I never received this letter your mother sent." He held up the unopened envelope. "If I had known, I would have been there. I would have been part of your life from the beginning." Emma took the letter with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the familiar handwriting. "Mom wrote this to you?" "Yes, 10 years ago, right after you were born. But how do you know for sure?" Her voice was small, fragile with hope and fear. "I recognized your mother from a photograph I found last night, and the timing. It all fits, Emma, but we can know for certain with a simple test. A DNA test that would prove I'm your biological father." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. "Is that why you want to adopt me? Because you think you're my real dad?" Jonathan shook his head firmly. "No, I wanted to adopt you before I had any idea about this connection. Finding out you might be my biological daughter doesn't change my desire to be your father. It just makes me feel like the universe was helping us find each other all along." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. "Mom always said my father was a good man who didn't know about me. She said someday we'd find him and he'd love me right away." Her voice broke. She was right. Jonathan gathered her into his arms, his own eyes damp. "Your mother was a remarkable woman, and she gave me the most precious gift I never knew I had, you." They sat together in silence. For several minutes, Emma clutching her mother's letter, Jonathan holding Emma as if he might never let go. The afternoon sun streamed through the office windows, illuminating the scattered papers on the floor, physical reminders of a past that had suddenly connected to the present in the most miraculous way. "Sophia's waiting to make cinnamon rolls," Emma finally said, her voice muffled against Jonathan's shirt. Jonathan laughed softly at the sudden return to the ordinary concern. "Yes, she is. Should we go help her?" Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Yes, and can we tell her about you being my real dad?" "If you want to," Jonathan agreed. "We can tell anyone you'd like." As they stood to leave the office, Emma hesitated. "Will things change now, because you're my real father?" Jonathan considered the question carefully. "Some things will change. The adoption process will be different if we confirm I'm your biological father. But the important things won't change at all. My wanting you here, our home together, our plans for the future." Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. At the door, she turned back to look at him, her expression suddenly serious. "I think I want to call you Dad. Not Papai anymore, just Dad. Is that okay?" Jonathan felt his heart expand in his chest, filled with an emotion too big to name. "That's more than okay, Emma. That's perfect." Hand in hand, they walked to the kitchen where Sophia waited, ready to teach them both how to make cinnamon rolls that smelled like Christmas. the first of many traditions they would build together as they forged their unexpected family. 3 weeks had passed since the discovery of Sarah's letter, and life in the penthouse had developed a rhythm that would have been unimaginable to Jonathan before Emma's arrival. Mornings began with breakfast together, often prepared by Sophia, who had increased her visits to daily, delighting in Emma's eager assistance in the kitchen. After Jonathan left for the office, Emma spent her days with Rachel, who had rearranged her schedule to act as a temporary guardian while they awaited Emma's school enrollment. The DNA test had confirmed what Jonathan already knew in his heart. Emma was indeed his biological daughter. The results had simplified the legal process considerably. Instead of adoption, Jonathan was now pursuing formal recognition of paternity and full custody. His attorney assured him that given the circumstances and the DNA evidence, the courts would almost certainly rule in his favor. Emma had blossomed in the stability of her new home. The haunted look that had shadowed her eyes was fading, replaced by a sparkle of curiosity and joy. She had transformed Jonathan's sterile penthouse into a genuine home, filling it with artwork, plants that thrived under her care, and most importantly, laughter. The rigid schedule that had governed Jonathan's life for decades had become more flexible, with business dinners often replaced by movie nights and weekend board meetings, giving way to excursions to museums and Central Park. Not everyone approved of these changes. Michael Reynolds, in particular, had become increasingly vocal about his concerns regarding Jonathan's divided focus. Their latest confrontation had occurred that morning in Jonathan's office at Tech Vision headquarters. "The Singapore deal is slipping through our fingers while you're playing house," Michael had said, his frustration evident in the tight set of his jaw. "3 months ago, you would have been on a plane already, smoothing things over in person. Now you're sending subordinates and doing video calls that end promptly at 5 so you can get home for dinner." "The Singapore deal will be fine," Jonathan had replied evenly. "James is more than capable of handling the negotiations, and yes, I do want to be home for dinner with my daughter. That's not a crime, Michael." "Your daughter," Michael had repeated, making air quotes with his fingers. "A child you didn't know existed until a few weeks ago. A child whose mother conveniently disappeared, leaving you with a heartwarming story about being reconnected with your long-lost offspring." Jonathan had felt a surge of anger at Michael's insinuation. "Don't go there, Michael. The DNA test confirmed it. Emma is my daughter, and Sarah's letter explains why I never knew about her. And our conservative investors, the board members who value traditional family structures. They're asking questions, Jonathan, about your judgment, about this instant family you've created, about whether your personal choices are affecting the company." "Let them ask," Jonathan had said dismissively. "Tech Vision's stock is up 12% this quarter. Our new product line is launching ahead of schedule. The company is thriving." "For now," Michael had muttered. "But there are whispers, competitors sensing weakness, shareholders questioning your commitment, and that interview you gave to the New York Chronicle didn't help." Jonathan had sighed, remembering the human interest piece that had run the previous week. The reporter had focused almost exclusively on his relationship with Emma, painting him as a devoted father rather than a tech visionary. The article had been picked up by national outlets, generating a wave of public interest in the billionaire dad and his remarkable reunion with his daughter. "The interview was fine, Michael. It humanized me, and by extension, the company. Not everything has to be about stock prices and market share." Michael had shaken his head in disbelief. "I don't even recognize you anymore. The Jonathan Miller I've known for 20 years would never say something like that." Perhaps he was right, Jonathan reflected now, as his car wound through midtown traffic toward home. He had changed, fundamentally and irreversibly. Priorities that had once seemed unshakable, the relentless pursuit of innovation, market dominance, wealth accumulation, now seemed hollow compared to Emma's smile when he walked through the door. The car pulled into the private garage beneath his building, and Jonathan felt the familiar lightening of his spirit that now accompanied his return home. No matter how challenging the day had been, the knowledge that Emma waited upstairs made everything else recede in importance. When the elevator doors opened into the penthouse, however, he was greeted not by Emma's usual enthusiastic welcome, but by Rachel's concerned face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, setting down his briefcase. "Is Emma okay?" "She's fine," Rachel assured him quickly. "She's in her room, drawing. But we have a situation." She led him to the kitchen, where Sophia was stress baking, flour dusting her usually impeccable chef's jacket. "Tell him, Sophia." The chef wiped her hands on a towel, her expression unusually grave. "Mr. Miller, a woman came to the building today, asking for Emma. She said she was Emma's aunt, her mother's sister." Jonathan felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. "Emma doesn't have an aunt. Sarah was an only child. She told Emma that many times." Rachel nodded. "That's what Emma said too when I asked her, but this woman was very insistent. She spoke to the doorman, showed some photographs of herself with Sarah. She left her contact information and said she'll be back tomorrow with proof of her claim." "What claim exactly?" Jonathan asked, his protective instincts immediately on alert. "She wants custody of Emma," Sophia said bluntly. "She told the doorman that Emma belongs with blood relatives, not with a father who didn't care enough to be part of her life until now." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "That's ridiculous. I never knew Emma existed. The DNA test proves she's my daughter." "We know that," Rachel said soothingly, "but this woman, Vanessa Wilson is her name, seems determined. And she had photographs, Jonathan, recent ones, with Sarah and Emma." Jonathan paced the kitchen, his mind racing. "Did you tell Emma about this?" Rachel shook her head. "We thought you should decide how to handle it. She knows something's wrong. She's very perceptive, but we just said we had some adult business to discuss with you." "Thank you for that." Jonathan ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of agitation. "I need to talk to my attorney, and I should speak with Emma. She might know something about this woman, even if she doesn't remember an aunt." As Rachel made the call to Jonathan's attorney, he went to find Emma. She was in her bedroom, which had transformed from a sterile guest suite into a child's sanctuary. The walls, once a neutral beige, were now adorned with framed artwork, some of Emma's own creations, others prints of famous paintings they had seen together at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. A bookshelf overflowed with the novels and science, books she devoured, and a small desk by the window was covered with art supplies. Emma looked up from her drawing as he entered, her face lighting up. "Dad, you're home early." The word Dad still gave him a thrill every time she said it. "Not too early to spend time with my favorite person," he replied, sitting on the edge of her bed. "What are you working on?" She held up her sketch, a detailed rendering of the New York skyline at sunset, remarkably sophisticated for a 10-year-old. "I'm trying to get the colors of the sky just right. Sophia says it's called the golden hour, when everything looks magical." "It's beautiful," Jonathan said honestly. "You have real talent, Emma." She beamed at the praise, then her expression grew more serious. "Rachel and Sophia were acting weird today. Did something happen at your company? Is it in trouble?" Jonathan smiled at her perceptiveness. "The company is fine, but there is something I need to ask you about." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Do you remember your mother ever mentioning a sister or any other relatives?" Emma's brow furrowed in concentration. "No. Mom always said it was just us. She told me her parents died when she was young, and she didn't have brothers or sisters." A shadow crossed her face. "Why? Did someone say they were related to us?" Jonathan saw no point in shielding her from the truth. Emma had endured too much deception in her young life already. "A woman came to the building today claiming to be your mother's sister, your aunt. Her name is Vanessa Wilson. Does that name mean anything to you?" Emma shook her head slowly, then stopped, her eyes widening. "Wait, there was a Vanessa who came to our apartment sometimes. Mom never said she was her sister. I thought she was just a friend from work." "What do you remember about her?" Jonathan asked gently. Emma's face scrunched in concentration. "She was nice to me, brought me presents sometimes, but Mom didn't always seem happy to see her. They argued once, when they thought I was asleep. Mom told her to stay away from them and stop causing trouble." She looked up at Jonathan, worry clouding her eyes. "Is she trying to take me away from you?" Jonathan's heart clenched at the fear in her voice. "No one is taking you away from me," he said firmly. "You're my daughter, and this is your home. I just need to understand who this woman is and what she wants." Emma launched herself at him, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. "I don't want to go with her. I want to stay with you." "And you will," Jonathan promised, returning her embrace. "I won't let anyone separate us." When Emma had calmed, Jonathan returned to the kitchen, where Rachel was finishing her call with his attorney. "He says to gather as much information as possible about this woman," she reported, "and he's preparing for any potential legal challenge, though he thinks your case is extremely strong given the DNA results and Sarah's letter." "Emma remembers her," Jonathan said grimly, "but not as an aunt, just as a friend of Sarah's who visited occasionally. She overheard them arguing once." Sophia, who had been listening silently while kneading dough with unnecessary force, spoke up. "I don't like this, Mr. Miller. This woman appears right when Emma is finally settling in, finally happy. It doesn't feel right." "I agree," Jonathan said, "which is why I want to meet with her myself, not wait for her to come back tomorrow, with whatever proof she claims to have." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You want to confront her?" "Not confront, understand." Jonathan's expression hardened. "I want to know exactly who she is and what she wants before she gets anywhere near Emma again." The meeting was arranged for that evening at Jonathan's attorney's office, neutral ground that still gave Jonathan the advantage of home territory. Vanessa Wilson arrived precisely at 7, a slender woman in her mid-30s with sharp features and calculating eyes that immediately put Jonathan on alert. "Mr. Miller," she greeted him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How kind of you to make time in your busy schedule." "Ms. Wilson," Jonathan replied coolly, "I understand you're claiming to be Sarah Anderson's sister." "Not claiming, Mr. Miller. I am Sarah's half-sister. Same father, different mothers." She opened her purse and removed several photographs, laying them on the table between them. "Here we are together at Emma's 5th birthday, and here at Sarah's nursing school graduation 2 years ago." Jonathan examined the photos carefully. They did indeed show Vanessa with Sarah and Emma appearing to share happy moments, but they proved nothing about a blood relationship. "Emma has no recollection of you as her aunt," Jonathan said evenly, "only as an occasional visitor who Sarah argued with." Vanessa's smile tightened. "Children don't always understand adult relationships. Sarah and I had our differences, but blood is blood, Mr. Miller, which is more than you can say despite your convenient DNA test." "My paternity isn't in question," Jonathan replied, his tone clipped. "What exactly are you hoping to achieve here, Miss Wilson?" Vanessa leaned forward, dropping all pretense of warmth. "Let's be direct. You're a wealthy man, Mr. Miller, very wealthy, and now you have a daughter you never bothered to look for until she literally walked into your restaurant. It makes for a touching story in the press, but I have to wonder about your motivations." "My motivations?" Jonathan repeated incredulously. "I'm Emma's father. I want to provide her with the stable, loving home she deserves. And I'm her only living relative on her mother's side," Vanessa countered. "I've known Emma her entire life. Where were you during those 10 years, Mr. Miller?" "Unaware of her existence," Jonathan said through gritted teeth, "as you well know if you were truly close to Sarah." Vanessa sat back, studying him. "Perhaps we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. I understand Emma is set to inherit a substantial trust when she comes of age, a trust you've recently established." And there it was, the real reason for Vanessa's sudden appearance. Not concern for Emma's welfare, but the money Jonathan had placed in trust for her future. "There will be no arrangement," Jonathan said coldly. "Emma stays with me. The trust is irrevocable and can only be accessed for her education until she turns 25. If you pursue this further, my legal team will investigate every aspect of your relationship with Sarah and Emma, including why Sarah never mentioned having a sister to her own daughter." Vanessa's expression hardened. "You think your money makes you invincible, Mr. Miller, but courts tend to favor blood relatives in custody cases, especially when the father has been absent for the child's entire life. Not when that father has DNA evidence, a letter from the mother explaining his absence and proof that the child is thriving in his care, Jonathan's attorney interjected smoothly. Not to mention character witnesses who can testify to Mr. Miller's devotion to his daughter. Vanessa gathered her photographs, her movements sharp with anger. This isn't over, Mr. Miller. Emma deserves to know her mother's family. If you truly care about Emma, Jonathan said quietly, you'll consider what's best for her. Stability, security, a home where she's already healing from tremendous loss. Don't put her through more trauma for your own gain. After Vanessa left, Jonathan remained seated, his hands clasped tightly on the table. She'll be back, he said to his attorney. This isn't about Emma, it's about money. And we'll be ready, the attorney assured him. Your case is strong, Jonathan, but we should prepare Emma for the possibility of court appearances, interviews, with social workers. It could get messy before it's resolved. Jonathan nodded grimly. Emma's stronger than anyone realizes, but she shouldn't have to be strong all the time. She deserves peace. When he returned home that evening, Jonathan found Emma waiting up for him despite the late hour, curled in a window seat overlooking the city lights. She looked small and vulnerable against the vast backdrop of Manhattan, but her expression as she turned to him was resolute. "Did you meet her?" she asked without preamble. "Vanessa." Jonathan sat beside her, nodding. "I did, and I think you were right. She wasn't as close to your mother as she claims." Emma picked at a loose thread on her pajama sleeve. "She came to our apartment after Mom got sick. She kept talking about paperwork and documents. Mom got really angry and told her to leave." She looked up at Jonathan, her eyes serious. "I don't think she's really my aunt. Mom would have told me if she had a sister." Jonathan put his arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. "We'll figure this out together, Emma. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, no matter who comes forward or what claims they make, nothing will change the fact that you are my daughter, and this is your home." Emma nodded against his shoulder. "I know, Dad. We're family now." "Yes," Jonathan agreed, kissing the top of her head. "We're family, and families protect each other." As the city lights twinkled below them, father and daughter sat together in comfortable silence, each drawing strength from the other's presence. The challenges ahead, Vanessa's claims, potential legal battles, the continuing scrutiny of the media seemed less daunting when faced together. They had found each other against impossible odds. They would not be separated now by someone whose only real interest was financial gain. Later, after Emma had finally gone to bed, Jonathan stood, alone on the terrace, gazing up at the stars barely visible through Manhattan's light pollution. Somewhere up there, he liked to think, Sarah was watching over their daughter, perhaps even guiding the remarkable series of events that had brought Emma to his table that night at Le Ciel. "I'll take care of her," he whispered to the night sky. "I promise." And somewhere in the vast universe it felt as if someone had heard him. 6 months had passed since Emma's unexpected entrance into Jonathan's life, transforming both of them in ways neither could have imagined. The Manhattan penthouse, once a showcase of impersonal luxury, now vibrated with life. Emma's artwork adorned the walls, plants flourished under her care, and the sounds of laughter regularly echoed through rooms that had known only silence before. The legal battle with Vanessa Wilson had been brief but intense. Jonathan's attorneys had dismantled her claims methodically, proving through records and witnesses that she was not Sarah's half-sister, but a former co-worker who had seen an opportunity for financial gain. The final blow to her case had come when Emma's former neighbor testified that Vanessa had appeared in their lives only after Sarah's illness, showing an unusual interest in Sarah's papers and possessions. In the end, the judge had not only dismissed Vanessa's custody claim but had granted Jonathan permanent sole custody of Emma, officially recognizing him as her biological father with all associated rights and responsibilities. The courtroom had erupted in applause when the decision was announced, an unusual response that reflected how deeply the father-daughter story had captured public imagination. Now, on a crisp October evening, Jonathan stood in the doorway of the penthouse media room, quietly observing Emma as she prepared for a momentous occasion. Tonight, Tech Vision was hosting an international delegation of investors at the penthouse, the first time Jonathan had mixed his professional and personal lives so completely. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by her art supplies, meticulously drawing place cards for each guest. Each card featured a personalized illustration based on the guest's home country: cherry blossoms for the Japanese investors, a stylized Eiffel Tower for the French delegation, the Sydney Opera House for the Australians. "These are remarkable," Jonathan said, entering the room. "The guests will be impressed." Emma looked up with a smile that still had the power to melt his heart. "Do you think they'll like them? I wanted them to feel special, like they have a piece of home here." "They'll love them," he assured her, sitting beside her on the floor, something the old Jonathan Miller would never have done in a tailored suit. "You have a gift for making people feel welcome." Emma beamed at the praise, carefully adding final details to the last card. "Sophia taught me that. She says food and art are languages everyone understands no matter where they're from." Sophia had become a permanent fixture in their household, transitioning from occasional chef to full-time culinary director, and increasingly a maternal figure for Emma. Her warm, no-nonsense approach complemented Jonathan's more reserved parenting style, creating a balance that seemed to work perfectly for their unconventional family. "Speaking of Sophia," Jonathan said, checking his watch, "she should be finishing the preparations soon. The guests will arrive in an hour. Are you nervous?" Emma considered the question seriously. "A little, but mostly excited. This is important for your company, right?" "It is," Jonathan acknowledged. "These investors could help Tech Vision expand into new markets across Asia and Europe. But even more important than that," he tapped her nose gently, "is that they'll get to meet my brilliant daughter." Emma giggled, then grew more serious. "Is Mr. Reynolds coming tonight? He doesn't like me very much." Jonathan sighed. His relationship with Michael had been strained since Emma's arrival, culminating in a heated confrontation after the custody hearing. Michael had accused Jonathan of prioritizing personal indulgences over company interests, a statement that would have enraged the old Jonathan. Instead, it had merely clarified what he already knew. His priorities had fundamentally shifted, and not everyone in his professional circle would understand or accept that change. "No, Michael isn't coming tonight," Jonathan said carefully. "He's in Singapore handling some business there." What he didn't tell Emma was that Michael had tendered his resignation the previous week, unwilling to adapt to the new direction Jonathan was taking the company, a direction that emphasized work-life balance, family-friendly policies, and corporate social responsibility. These changes had initially alarmed the board, but had gradually won support as employee satisfaction soared and positive press mounted. "I think he just needs time," Emma said wisely. "Change is hard for grown-ups. You told me that." Jonathan laughed softly at having his own words quoted back to him. "When did you get so smart about people?" Emma shrugged, gathering her completed place cards. "Mum always said I was an old soul. She said I could see things in people they couldn't see themselves." "She was right," Jonathan agreed, helping her stand. "Now, let's get these to Sophia, and then get you ready for tonight's big event." An hour later, the penthouse had been transformed into an elegant reception venue. Sophia and her team had created a stunning array of international cuisines, displayed artfully throughout the main living area. Soft lighting highlighted the spectacular views of Central Park and the Manhattan skyline, while subtle background music created an atmosphere of refined hospitality. Emma stood beside Jonathan as the elevator delivered the first guests, the Japanese delegation, led by Takashi Yamamoto, a tech visionary in his own right who had expressed interest in Tech Vision's latest innovations. "Mr. Yamamoto," Jonathan greeted him warmly, "welcome to our home. May I introduce my daughter, Emma?" Emma stepped forward, offering a perfect bow she had practiced for days after researching Japanese customs. "Konnichiwa, Yamamoto-san," she said carefully. "Thank you for visiting us." Yamamoto's face broke into a delighted smile as he returned the bow. "Miller-san, your daughter is most impressive. Such respect for other cultures is rare in one so young." Emma created the place cards for tonight's dinner, Jonathan said proudly. Each one reflects the guest's home country. When Emma presented Yamamoto with his card, a delicate rendering of Mount Fuji with cherry blossoms, the businessman studied it with genuine appreciation. "This is beautiful work, Emma-chan. You have captured the spirit of Japan." As more guests arrived, Emma continued to charm them with her thoughtful place cards, her careful research of their countries, and her sincere interest in their cultures. The investors, many of whom had initially expressed skepticism about meeting with a CEO who had so publicly embraced fatherhood, found themselves won over by the authentic family dynamic they witnessed. During dinner, Emma sat beside Jonathan at the head of the table, contributing to the conversation with observations that were remarkably insightful for her age. When the conversation turned to TechVision's proposed expansion into educational technology, Emma spoke passionately about the importance of making such tools accessible to all children, regardless of economic status. "My mom worked really hard, so I could have books and a computer," she explained to the attentive investors. "But a lot of kids don't have that. If technology is only for rich kids, then we're wasting a lot of great minds that could help solve big problems." A brief silence followed her words before Yamamoto nodded solemnly. "The child speaks wisdom. Perhaps this is the most valuable market of all, not the privileged few, but the many who need these tools most." The discussion shifted, inspired by Emma's perspective, toward a more inclusive vision for TechVision's educational platforms. By the end of the evening, the international delegation had not only committed to the proposed investments, but had expanded their offer to include specific funding for initiatives targeting underserved communities. As the last guests departed, Emma yawned widely, the excitement of the evening finally catching up with her. "Did I do okay, Dad?" she asked sleepily. Jonathan lifted her into his arms, something he hadn't done since she was a toddler he never knew. "You did more than okay, Emma. You changed minds tonight. You might have changed the future of the company." "Really?" she mumbled against his shoulder, already half asleep. "Really," he confirmed, carrying her to her bedroom. "You reminded everyone, including me, what really matters." After tucking Emma in, Jonathan found Rachel and Sophia in the kitchen, reviewing the evening's success as they enjoyed a well-deserved glass of wine. "The Singapore group just emailed," Rachel reported, holding up her phone. "They're doubling their investment, and specifically mentioned Emma's comments about educational access as a key factor in their decision." Sophia smiled knowingly. "That child has magic in her. She opens hearts without even trying." "Including mine," Jonathan acknowledged, accepting the glass Rachel offered him. "I can't imagine my life without her now." "You don't have to," Rachel reminded him gently. "The custody issue is settled. Emma is legally and biologically yours. Your family is secure." Family. The word still felt new and precious to Jonathan, who had spent most of his life believing he would never have one. Growing up in the orphanage, watching other children leave with their new families while he remained behind, he had eventually armored himself against the desire for connection. Success, achievement, wealth, these had become his substitute for the emotional bonds he had convinced himself he didn't need. Now, 6 months after a hungry child had called him papai in a crowded restaurant, Jonathan barely recognized his former self. The driven, isolated CEO who measured his worth by stock prices and market share had been replaced by a father who rushed home for dinner, who attended parent-teacher conferences with the same intensity he once reserved for board meetings, who found more joy in his daughter's smile than in any business triumph. "There's something I've been considering," he said to Rachel and Sophia, setting down his glass. "I'll change to TechVision's structure, and to my role in it." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "What kind of change?" "I'm thinking of stepping back from day-to-day operations, not retiring completely, but transitioning to a more strategic role that would allow me more time with Emma." Jonathan had been contemplating this move for weeks, ever since Emma had started at her new school, and he had found himself resenting the long hours that kept him from being fully present in her life. "Are you sure?" Rachel asked, though her expression suggested she already knew his answer. "TechVision has been your life for 20 years. That's just it," Jonathan replied. It was my life because I had nothing else. Now I do. He gestured toward Emma's bedroom. She's only going to be a child once. I've already missed 10 years. I don't want to miss any more because I'm stuck. In meetings I don't need to attend or making decisions others could make just as well. Sophia nodded approvingly. Children need time more than things, Mr. Miller. You are making the right choice. The board won't be thrilled, Rachel warned, though her smile betrayed her support for his decision. But they'll adapt, especially after tonight's success, and public opinion will be overwhelmingly positive. The billionaire CEO who prioritizes fatherhood over fortune. Jonathan grimaced at the likely headlines. This isn't about public opinion. It's about being the father Emma deserves. We know, Sophia assured him, patting his hand, and so does she. The next morning, Jonathan woke early, as had become his habit since Emma came into his life. The October sunrise cast a golden glow over Central Park, highlighting the autumn foliage that had transformed the landscape into a tapestry of red, orange, and gold. He found Emma already awake, standing on the terrace in her pajamas, watching the city come to life below. Her hair, grown longer in the months since she'd come to live with him, caught the morning light like spun gold. "Good morning, early bird," he greeted her, wrapping a throw blanket around her shoulders against the autumn chill. "Morning, Dad," she replied, leaning into his side. "I was thinking about Mom. Do you think she knows I'm okay now that I found you?" Jonathan's throat tightened with emotion. "I believe she does," he said softly. "I think she's been watching over you all along. She made sure you had her letter, even though it never reached me. She taught you Portuguese, taught you to say papai. In a way, she led you to my table that night." Emma considered this, her expression solemn. "I still miss her, but I'm not scared anymore. I know I belong somewhere now." "You do," Jonathan affirmed, hugging her close. "You belong right here with me. Always." As they stood together watching the sunrise, Jonathan reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this moment. From a chance encounter born of desperation to the unbreakable bond they now shared, their story had unfolded with a perfection no business strategy could have achieved. He had gained far more than a daughter. He had rediscovered parts of himself, long buried under ambition and isolation. Emma had called him papai that night out of instinct, perhaps guided by some deeper wisdom than either of them understood. What had seemed like a desperate plea from a hungry child had actually been a recognition, soul recognizing soul across the barriers of time, circumstance, and missed connections. "What are you thinking about?" Emma asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Jonathan smiled down at her. "I'm thinking about how sometimes the most important things in life find us when we're not even looking for them." "Like how I found you," Emma said with the simple clarity of childhood. "Exactly like that," Jonathan agreed. "Like how we found each other." In the months and years that followed, as Emma grew from a resilient child into a confident young woman, Jonathan never regretted his decision to reshape his life around fatherhood. TechVision continued to thrive under shared leadership, implementing Emma's vision for educational access through foundations and initiatives that reach children around the world. Their story inspired others, leading to increased awareness of adoption and improvements in systems designed to connect children with families. Most importantly, the lonely CEO and the abandoned child had healed each other, creating a family bond that transformed both their lives. Their unlikely beginning, a desperate encounter in a luxury restaurant, had blossomed into a relationship built on love, respect, and the profound understanding that sometimes, against all odds, the universe conspires to bring together those